You'll see on the screen the area of the approved structuring plan. This is the master plan for the whole of the redevelopment of the former Prince Philip Barracks. And obviously this covers some of the areas that have already been developed, like Hogmore Enclosure, the woodland that's open, the schools at Oakmoor School, the leisure centre in the town centre, the 2 phases of Duke's Quarter, Wilmore Copse and so on. And the salmon pink colour is the new residential area that's still yet to be developed. And then the top left-hand part of the screen is the area of what's around BOSC Pavilion designated for some 350 homes, of which we're bringing forward the first phase of 110 homes. That's the red line shown in that plan at the top left of the screen. And this forms part of the overall 2,400 homes that got approved in 2015. And the purpose of this presentation is to describe in detail the types of homes and plans for the area that we're bringing forward as part of our application.
Good evening as well from me. My name's Bruce. So the structuring plan shows the main parts of the infrastructure that we have permission for under the hybrid planning application, which was granted in 2015, as James just said. We've got also emerging plans for an extension through the emerging local plan, which we're in discussions with East Hampshire District Council and others about. For the point of this presentation, we're purely focusing on BOSC Village Phase 1, which is the area in the inset and the left with the red line around it. However, we understand that people have got questions about the local plan work that's currently underway, so we'd be happy to take questions about that later on. So if you can add any questions on the chat as we go through, we can pick those up later. You will see on the structuring plan that there's lots of different colours, and just to walk you through those, for those of you that are local, Hogmore Enclosure is the large green area to the left of the structuring plan. The salmon pink area is predominantly where the housing is, which runs up to the BOSC Village in the top left. The orange area is the proposed town centre, which is currently under construction, and then the L-shaped purple area is the new secondary school, Oakmoor, which is obviously been opened. So the structuring plan is the basis for which all the detailed planning applications come forward in a current approved scheme. In more detail of the same area for the BOSC Village Phase 1, you can see there's an aerial shot there on the right-hand side, which shows the brown square is where it's no longer brown, it's now green because it's been delivered. But it's the playing pitches with the cricket and the football, and then the BOSC Pavilion, which has also been opened as well. You will see that the red line shows the extent of the BOSC Village Phase 1 and sort of wraps, it goes in between the Borden Trading Estate to the left, and then the Annington houses to the right. The image on the left-hand side we call a constraints plan, which includes all the features of the site that we have to give due regard to in all our assessments of the planning. So it shows the current topography, the main highway, or the main road, which is Gibbs Lane, and then also where the features, archaeological features are, for example, as well as showing the nearby cemetery and also Borden Trading Estate.
And here is the master plan for BOSC Village. On the right-hand side of the screen, you've got Oak Hanger Road leading from Borden down the screen towards Oak Hanger. You've got Borden Trading Estate to the south. You've got the green area in the middle is where the cricket is played and the BOSC Pavilion. And the top right of the screen, that light green colour, is the current Annington housing and also the military cemetery, which are untouched by our proposals. So we're dealing with all of the area around BOSC Pavilion and around Bolly Avenue. And this is for some 350 homes as described, and includes in that a retirement care home, which is that sort of grey shape towards the Annington homes near the BOSC Pavilion. And the first phase is the phase to the bottom right of the screen for some 110 homes, which we'll describe in more detail in a minute.
And on the first phase of the master plan, which is the area we're talking about, you can see that the main structure of this plan is to base housing around a corridor road that takes you through from Oakhanger Road up to Bolly Avenue. And you have a mixture of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom houses, as well as a few flats towards the top left of your picture. But preserving the main, what will become a very sort of green setting for people who live here, particularly on the western edge, and the buffer that takes you through the middle from left to right across the screen there. And you can see the sort of hierarchy of streets, the red being the main route through from Oakhanger Road to Bolly Avenue, and Bolly Avenue goes sort of top left to bottom right, at the top right of your screen there. You've also got a blue secondary route that takes you up another way towards Bolly Avenue, and then you've got the internal streets for people living there, the dotted greens, and then you've got sort of the pedestrian and cycle routes, which are the yellow. So it's a very permeable scheme, but it is very green, and it's deliberately trying to create a village in a very green setting. This is a picture of the pavilion as is now. Some of you obviously are very familiar with it, others may not be. So this is an actual cricket match that happened last year, and Heath Cricket Club are actively playing 2 teams in this coming year from April, and the pavilion is very much in use and is increasingly being used by for a range of different things. Community, you have a petanque square there, you have tennis, you obviously have cricket. We will be introducing football from next season as well. And then you've got the venue upstairs where we will have weddings and other functions and community groups as well. So it's a very active community, and it's an important part of what will be a feature at the heart of the village. And this is a plan of what part of the scheme will look like. This is actually in the phase 2 sketches that we took as an sample of the style of housing, with that set in a very sort of tree focused setting, and a very soft setting for the houses. It has got that village feel to it. And that's been inspired by the character of the areas. If we go to the next slide. And the architects went to every conservation area in the district and effectively tried to see what types of materials had been used over time that provided a feature for the villages in and around Whitehall and Borden, and the different styles of architecture that have influenced them in their designs, trying to look at the arts and crafts movement, for example, or even some more of the classical movements, as you can see, traditional cottages and so on. And not so much Victorian, but very much about those earlier times and the influence of softer verges around the streets as well, not many hard edges to everything. It's deliberately trying to use a mixture of the soft edges and the green landscaping to set the architecture apart in its setting. And so here are some of the first designs that you'll see of the housing that's coming forward. There are 3 separate sections of flats. This is the flats B, there's A, B, and C, and it's generally speaking, everything is 2-storey, with the exception, we're looking at a retirement area later, possibly 3 stories. But everything will be fairly classic 2 or 3-storey architecture, and very traditional shapes and features. And here are some 2 and 3 bedroom houses. There's sort of 2 semi-detached 2-bedroom houses. There's a terrace of 3-bedroom houses with very classic porticos on the front and gables and so on. Here are some 4-bedroom houses. You will see the different types of materials that are being referenced in the design code work that you will have seen online already. On the left, you've got a 4-bedroom house that has use of flint as part of its rendering. And then on the right-hand side, you've got a more classical shape and design with a much more structural porch at the front. And classical, very classical windows and geometry. 5-bedroom house, there's the sort of largest, one of the largest types of 5-bedroom houses there, and very grand, and it will have a grand setting, it will have the gardens that go with it, and Bruce can refer to the sort of gardens and the scale in which these houses are sat. But we also are doing 2 bedrooms, so you've got a 2-bedroom flat over garages, as you've seen at the bottom right there, and 2-bedroom houses, as you've seen before. So it's a real mixture of housing, and that all of this housing, generally speaking, up until the biggest ones, is in the sort of Help to Buy range. It fits the budgets that are supported by government in terms of trying to get people onto the housing ladder. And it's housing that will be a collection of units, plots 12 to 16, where you can see how a grander building is made up of a number of different houses. And it's a real sort of collection and a kind of a statement onto what will be opposite the sort of central green in the middle. And here's one of the first sketches of that first phase, looking northwards across the pond. If you see the square in the top right-hand corner, the blue area, it's looking north across there. And you can sort of see the setting that at this sort of central part of the site, how that looks into the distance, and very much the different types of styles, flint on the left and brick, and more render and stone on the right. And then this is a picture looking south on the right, on the top right-hand tile. If you're looking south towards the Ellington properties in the distance, this is the sort of good example of the courtyard areas with cars and trees and housing in between. And it's quite similar to, if you've seen past Ambry, it's very similar in feel to that. And you get a mixture of undercroft garages and on the right there, as you can see, and also garages that are more traditional in form as well.
So this is the tree strategy for the first phase. This was discussed at the town council session before Christmas, just to bring it back, because I know people still have questions about this. But essentially, through the assessments we've undertaken and submitted to the district council for consideration and approval, you can see there that the green wavy line, certainly down at the left-hand side, is providing a green corridor of around 30 metres in width. That retains some of the significant and trees with the most character along that edge, and also provides a route through which people can walk and cycle, as well as a wildlife corridor as well. And then you'll also see within the centre of the site, there's also a green area which contains the veteran trees, which are the highly important trees, not only for this phase but for the wider area of the BOSC, and that they are being protected and retained and integrated into the proposals that we will submit planning application for. Now you can see, as James has already said, that those green areas, which I'll come on to talk to, really influence the layout and design and the routes through which people and also wildlife can move through this area. The red and orange dots are trees which we have been in discussion with the District Council and other stakeholders regarding retention within the development, and those trees will end up in people's back gardens, but also along the main routes and thoroughfares through the development. So looking at more sort of a landscape master plan where you can see more colour, you can instantly see the amount of greenery that goes through the entirety of the development. So that's not only on the edges, so the edge of the Broad Trading Estate and the Annington homes, but also through the centre of the site as well. So James has already mentioned the houses with larger back gardens form part of the corridors for wildlife to move through the development, and then also things like street trees and other planting, which you'll see in a second, which go along the roads and the footpaths. So this is a selection of some of the plant species that, for those of you who know this area well, you'll see when you're out on your walks, and you may even have some in your gardens as well, but things like gorse and hazel, holly, oak are all, honeysuckle are all common to this area. And the northern habitat area that is referred to here is the area between the phase 1 and also Broadband Trading Estate. So it's that large corridor that I mentioned earlier, about 30 metres. And then the other area, large green area that was also on the master plan between the Annington properties and the proposals here. Again, more large-scale planting of trees, understory shrubs, plants like gorse, and also heather as well. So this improves the mix in terms of the diversity of the species we're selecting, which is more attractive to a wider range of wildlife locally. And then, as I touched on, the sort of street trees, which provide not only colour through the year, but also fruit. So you can see there's pear and apple trees there. So again, it provides a bit more interest from a local community point of view, but also it provides more richness for the local ecology as well. For those of you that were eagle-eyed on the master plan, landscape master plan that we showed, you noticed there was a couple of ponds. Again, these are important areas for wildlife. It helps provide these features and rich diversity, especially for things like insects, bees, dragonflies, etc. But also really contributes towards the character of the place and give it that sort of villagey feel, so sort of a village pond, which again will be sit in the heart of the new proposals. Infrastructure planting. By that we mean shrubs, herbaceous plants that are planted along footpaths and also along the edges of the main woodland areas. Again, they provide a lot of colour, but also pollinating insects like bees, butterflies. They provide again more diversity in habitats and also look nice through the year. So it's going to be a very colourful, very green phase of development, and it will really, as James said earlier, pick up and really present a really good sort of village character, which we've taken from elsewhere in the local area. The trees, again, is something we've had a lot of queries about, and in the chat, after I finish the presentation, we can talk about this more as we did before Christmas with the Town Council. So just to draw everybody's attention, the plan that has been submitted in the public, to EHDC, East Hampshire District Council, been in the public domain for some weeks now, since before Christmas. The red areas are the areas which we are seeking to fell trees before the end of March. This enables us to start the first phase of the development around the groundwork. And then the purple areas will be an area subject to further approval that we will seek to fell trees in the future. But for the purposes of the conversation tonight, the area of the red trees is what we are seeking to fell through the submission we've made to East Hampshire District Council. The only change to note, which we have, is the need to provide a corridor from Oakhanger Road up into the red area, which follows where the new utilities and the construction access will be. That's important because it then takes the construction traffic away from Folly Avenue and Gibbs Lane, and means that the construction has got its own access that is separate from all other users, therefore making it much safer.
So just coming on to timescales and picking up some of the comments that are coming in, the idea is that we submit a full reserve matters application. That's the detailed planning application for what you've seen on the screen, hopefully by the end of this month. That's in consultation with the East Hampshire District Council, but we hope that that application will be live by the end of this month. And then East Hampshire will run a planning process and will consult with people through to hopefully a decision 4 months later. So that's by the end of May, hopefully. And that will be another opportunity for you to comment on our plans and see all the detailed work that goes behind this presentation in terms of the reports. We have to consider all aspects when you're bringing forward an application, including archaeology and ecology and all the usual ologies that he talks about, all the technical work that goes with an application. Transport, parking, etc., and layouts, and making sure that it supports a safe and sustainable place to live. And the idea being that we can start on site in June, getting the site ready, which is all about services and getting the road in. And then once that happens, we will start building the first houses towards the end of the year, with the idea that the shower homes open at the start of next year, January 22. And if we hit that timescale, then we're expecting to sell about 40 homes a year. The first phase is 110 homes. So we plan to complete the first phase certainly by December 24. And then by then we'll have thought about what's happening in the second phase and bring that forward into the planning application. So it's a relatively slow build out rate, because we feel that the quality is really important, and we're trying to go about this in the right way, and because we want this to be a really attractive place for people who want to come and live. So that's the timescales. You will also be able to quiz us on the construction management plans and how we keep traffic away from Folly Avenue, and we are very conscious that in and around this area, people are living and working, and it's part of their amenity as part of their life. So we're very careful to ensure that we try and keep the construction traffic and everything away from people that live off Folly Avenue, or even work at the training estate, or need access up Gibbs Lane and so on. So that's also part of our plans, and those are our timescales. So I'll hand you back now to Christine, who's been picking on a few questions that as they've been coming in. There's quite a lot of questions coming in, so hopefully we can answer a few of those now, and we will definitely pick any other things that we don't manage to cover tonight off in the further commentary later.
Brilliant, thanks James. Great, so we've had lots of questions submitted during the presentation, which is fantastic, thank you for those. As we're going through the questions now, if you have any more, please do send them in using the chat box on the right. I understand there are some people who weren't able to hear me speaking at the start of the presentation, but basically I was just kind of running through the format for today's presentation, and just to remind people that the chat box is open for questions. So please do submit your questions there. I was also just reiterating that we'll try and get through as many as we can before the end of the webinar in about half an hour's time. And any questions that we aren't able to come back to you on now, we'll make sure that they are included in that FAQ document, which will be uploaded to the Prince Philip Park website and issued out through social media. Okay, so just starting with the first question that's come through this evening. What will you be putting in place to protect Short Heath Common?
So that's a question for me. So for those of you that aren't aware, Short Heath Common is a European protected site for its habitats. It is just to the northwest of the BOSC area, further down Gibbs Lane, which is a public highway. So there's two parts to this answer. The first part is to do with the habitat regulations, which is within UK law, requires the government, including its agencies like Natural England and local planning authorities, to preserve and protect the European protected sites. The responsibility for that protection as competent authority rests with, in this case, East Hampshire District Council. Short Heath Common is also owned and managed by Hampshire County Council, so it's a collaboration in terms of management and protection between East Hampshire District Council and Hampshire County Council. When we submitted the outline planning application, which is approved, we were required through planning to submit something called a habitat regulations assessment. That assessment outlined the potential impacts that development of the overall projects of the 2,400 homes would have, or potentially, on the European protected sites. Now, it's not just Short Heath Common, but Broxhead Common, Walmer Forest, and the other European sites. And within that, there was a commitment. In two parts. The first part was an obligation or commitment from us as the developers to provide a suitable alternative natural green space, or SAM, which was opened, which is Frogmore Enclosure, and was opened in 2017. So that was our obligation to provide alternative space for people, primarily to walk their dogs, because most visitors to European protected sites, according to the visitor surveys that have been undertaken, are dog walkers. So it's principally aimed for dog walkers. But other people obviously use Frogmore Enclosure, and they're very welcome to, so cyclists and people have picnics, etc. But it's a very popular space. The second element is called Strategic Access Management and Monitoring, which is an acronym called SAM. Apologies for the acronyms, these aren't ours, these are ones we have to use for the planning process. And that is a commitment from us as developers to pay money through the Section 106 to the planning authority to deliver measures on the European protected sites to help support their management, but also to avoid the impacts associated with housing development if they are identified. So that's the habitat regulations assessment process. And that covers that work, and the associated monitoring covers us for the 2,400 homes. Now, I know a couple of you have emailed myself and James about the local plan, and that's the additional homes that have been put in the public domain as a possibility for the future. Now, that further delivery of housing will require another habitat regulations assessment. So that will be a new body of work that will happen once we get to the right point in the local plan process. And I say we, I mean, what I mean by that, the local authority in producing the new plan. So there'll be new evidence and new surveys. So that's one side of it in terms of the European designation. Those people, a lot of people on the call will also be aware that Short Heath Common is a SSSI site for special scientific interest, and that in itself provides other requirements around ecological surveys, not just of Short Heath Common, but of also the BOSC area itself, because there are features and species within the BOSC area, which are also important, either nationally or at county level, so locally important. When we submit the detailed plan application, it includes something called an ecological mitigation compensation enhancement strategy. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful, but essentially what you'll be able to read within that is all the survey work that we've done very recently, reported on, and then how that's used to determine what's required in order to support those species, which has led on to some of the things that James and I have said today about creating ponds, wooded areas, more planting, more diversity of plants. So you'll be able to read that with the plan application, and through the consultation, you'll be able to ask more questions about it. There are surveys ongoing all the time. That's not just for the BOSC area, but across the wider development. And all that data is submitted to the Hampshire Biodiversity Information Centre, which is managed through the County Council, and members of the public can request that information. So that surveys everything from protected species like bats and badgers, all the way through to things like bird surveys, which are important, tree surveys, and other botanical surveys. So there's a lot of information and data I've just whistled through there. All of that goes to inform the design. And just to restate what James said, is the design layout is being informed by the landscape and what's in it, not the other way around.
Great. Okay. Next question. Has there been any more surveys done on the impact the development will have on the surrounding sacks?
I think, Christine, I've just sort of covered that off in my spiel about habitat regulations assessments. But what I will do is in the FAQ, I can provide more information on that if it's required.
Perfect. Will the construction traffic affect Bolly Avenue residents?
So as I've said, the intention is to take as much construction traffic away from Bolly Avenue as possible. There are some upgrade works needed to Bolly Avenue from the works we undertook to do with the BOSC Pavilion, and those works will be done, and we have to do those anyway. So there will be some disruption to Bolly Avenue in any event, notwithstanding these plans. But our intention is to keep the construction traffic away from Bolly Avenue as much as possible. It won't be completely without some impact, but the intention is to minimise that impact.
Perfect. When is the new town centre and other amenities going to be developed?
So the new town centre is ongoing. We did a last, in December I think it was, we did a session with the town council. A lot of these questions were asked. We will have another Q&A session with Whitehall Town Council. But briefly, the town centre has started, it's underway. The Makers Market in the shed is opening at Easter together with the town park and town squares, town parking. The leisure centre, as you know, is finished and is opening. We've already started designing the next two buildings in the town centre. I'm hoping in the next few weeks to be able to announce the food store that is coming. We've had some very good discussions with one particular operator, and as soon as we can say, we'll announce that name hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And the work carries on with the NHS for the Health Hub. Obviously, the NHS COVID-19 vaccination programme is taking priority at the moment. But in the background, we're still working quite hard with the NHS CCG clinical commissioning group who commission the services in the town centre, and to make sure we've got the services that they want to see. And the intention is to get to the summer with, again, an announcement that the Health Hub is going so that the applications can come in. So the town centre is underway, and it will be delivered in block by block over the next 2 to 3 years.
How many houses in total are being built on the Bolly Avenue development?
So there's, in total, it's approximately 350 or 360 homes. That will include a care home or a retirement home, sheltered accommodation, and we're looking at a 60-bed retirement home there, which will, and linking that with the pavilion and what's offered at the pavilion is really attractive to some of the care home operators. And therefore, there's about 300 other homes, 320, 330 other homes in and around BOSC Pavilion.
Can you just provide a bit of insight around the other transport services going into that area?
So the intention is that with the width of the new entrance up into the area is wide enough to take buses. We've been liaising with Hampshire County Council on making sure that the area can be supported by buses and obviously taxis. And as you'll probably be aware, that we're working quite hard to promote a demand responsive service so that people can call on buses on demand with 15 minutes, have somebody visit, take them where they want to go at a fare at the price of a bus. Now, that's a brand that we're calling Vocal. We're hoping to launch that soon. But that requires approval by Hampshire County Council in particular to deliver those services. So the intention is that this area will be served by a bus operator, and it's something we're quite excited about, and that's for the whole of the town.
Will there be a Help to Buy provision on the development?
So yes, the whole area, the pricing of the housing enables Help to Buy to be offered, and we are registering for Help to Buy.
What grade trees will you be planting and types?
So I touched on those in the presentation. So the plants being as part of the landscape scheme are all native species, and they range from what will be large trees such as oaks down to sort of understory planting, sort of holly and hazel, with climbers such as honeysuckle, and then in the wetland areas, the ponds, things like irises and forget-me-nots will be planted to provide a sort of a mature green environment. We won't put in small plants. We'll be putting larger scale plants, which gives instant benefit to the look and feel of the area we're developing, but also ensures that with proper care and attention, they will flower early, produce fruit, and they will look they will mature into the area much quicker. So we will be investing a lot in ensuring we're putting in mature large plants.
What sort of parking will be available at these new houses?
So we're meeting the local council, district council's parking standards. So if you have a 2-bedroom house, say, there should be 2 spaces, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 3 spaces. And so it meets the car parking requirements of the district council.
Who will maintain the areas of planting?
So we are working with an organisation called the Land Trust, who will manage the larger green spaces across the entirety of our development. They in turn work with local partners and organisations to manage specific groups. So the benefit of that is that there's we call it a strategic manager of the green space across the entirety of our development, within organisations such as Deadwater Valley Trust, who manage Hogmore and Clover at the moment, can then work under their umbrella to deliver different services. So the management will be everything from litter picking, pruning, all the way up to maintaining things like the trees, the larger trees and footpaths through the entirety of the development. So there's no separation of management. It will come under one body.
Will the cycle tracks be physically segregated from traffic?
So what we've done with the county council and the district council is work very hard to provide high quality off-road links throughout our new development, but also linking across the town. and it sometimes is a challenge to segregate cycling, walking, and being very near highways. But where we are planning, being able to plan for new developments, such as the BOSC Village Phase 1, we've got the opportunity to segregate cyclists and pedestrians, which, again, the landscape master plan we've shown in the presentation does hint at that, but when the planning application gets submitted, you'll see it in more detail. But yes, it's something we would like to promote because we understand it's more attractive.
Next question, how is sound and light pollution being addressed?
So part of our survey work includes all the noise and air quality surveys, and we quite deliberately have a buffer zone maintained quite a large gap from the Gordon trading estate to the left of the screen, the western side. And we will be taking noise surveys of those buildings to make sure that any noise pollution is then subsequently managed, and we will talk, if there is any problems with those units in terms of noise reduction, we will work with them to quieten their impact on the area. And there's further survey work that you will see when you register for the plans, addressing all of how we deal with noise and light pollution in particular. We are conscious that we're an area of lots of foraging, bat foraging, and other corridors, natural corridors that we need to be very aware of, and we are at pains to try and make sure that our development is sensitive to those issues, and lighting is appropriate.
How close to the cricket square will the closest garden and house be in any direction?
So we're following Sport England's advice in terms of the distances from the cricket to the homes, and so that we're well, we're beyond those that area, so the distances are safe. There's another question we've missed actually. I forgot to say that. And that also applies to the homes, the Annington homes. There's a buffer strip provided to keep development away from the Annington homes and making sure there's a buffer strip to them. There is no plans to bring forward any developments on the Annington military homes. They will be left untouched as a consequence of these plans.
How will the development impact the current homes on Bolly Avenue?
We've touched on briefly on there's going to be some impact. You will be pleased to know that the Annington homes are undergoing an upgrade. The Annington are upgrading those homes for families that live there. Certainly on the left-hand side, western side of Bolly Avenue. And we're trying to minimise the construction impact on the homes as we've discussed.
In 2015, that required a lot of work at the time with the different utility companies, which includes Scottish and Southern Energy, electricity, I'll get it right, SSE, also Thames Water and South East Water. So they have been aware for a long time that through this hybrid plan application permission, there's a requirement to provide the infrastructure to support the development. What we do through regular contact with them, and I say regular, it's almost weekly in some instances, we're ensuring that their plans to improve or provide new infrastructure supports the development. And certainly the planning applications that we submit, such as BOSC Village Phase 1, is consulted on with Thames Water, South East Water and SSE to ensure that we are, and they can respond to our requirements, but we are working together with them. The Thames Water element is very important because of for those of you who know, the sewage treatment works is in need of updating. That's in part as a consequence of the development, but it is one of the older treatment works in the area. So Thames Water are on board with upgrading that, and we can provide more information on timings. But there's a constant need to improve and provide more infrastructure. The other thing that we're doing is generating things like electricity on site. So through our sustainability strategy, we've got at the moment 450 solar panels that are being mounted on the new houses, with another 580 approved we're currently building at the moment. So that enables us to generate our own electricity to support the residential and commercial developments. The leisure centre, for example, that the district council built also has solar panels on it as well. And more recently, we're exploring the use of domestic battery technology, which means that for the new homes that are being built opposite the secondary school, Oakmoor Secondary School, the actual electricity generated, rather than being distributed or put back into the grid, it's actually stored and then can be used. All of those things reduce our constraints and impact on the local electricity network, but also enable us to save carbon emissions and be more sustainable. And then lastly, broadband was part of that question. We decided, we WBRC with partners have established our own broadband company, and that provides fibre to the premises, to the home. That is being rolled out across all of our new homes, and we're working to deliver what is in effect hyper-fast broadband, so much quicker speeds than you can achieve through BT or other services. So, and that's part of our wish to future-proof the development, particularly as we've seen recently when more people are working at home. We're using technology like this. Actually, having good broadband is essential.
Can you provide any insight on the house price ranges?
So we haven't yet decided what the prices are going to be, because we're still making sure we've got the right mix of housing. We're taking advice, but they're broadly in line with the house prices in the area. That's typically for a 3-bedroom home, you're looking at relatively good sizes, so somewhere in the region of 375,000 up to just over 400,000 for a 3-bedroom. And you know, similarly, a 2-bedroom is probably in the mid to 260 to 300,000 pounds. So not dissimilar in house prices currently in the area.
Can you provide some more information about the contractors that will be working on site, times they're going to be, what roads they're going to be used, etc.? So
the developer, this will be the first scheme outside of Oxfordshire that Dorchester Living deliver. So if you go on to Heath Park, you can see the types of houses that they've been delivering successfully at Upper Heath, the former USAF Air Force Base, which has been redeveloped in a similar way to Whitehall and Borden. And the contractors, they will manage the contractors and the build of the homes. And the working hours will be much the same as the other working hours in the town. So recently those were extended due to the lockdown that has enabled construction workers to extend their hours of work with the approval of the district council. But generally speaking, most construction work takes place in daylight hours. So it's generally in daylight hours that construction work will be taking place.
What will you be doing with the high voltage electricity power lines which will run from across the south and west of the site? So
for those of you that would have spotted on the constraints plan, that overhead power cable is noted on that plan, and we're obviously aware it's there. We're currently working with SSE on how best to deal with it, and looking at different options, one of which could be putting part of it underground. That provides us with a better solution on the western edge of development, and really opens that area up as a green corridor. But you'll be able to see more any information on that through the detailed planning application.
Any more paths being built and street lighting?
So there are, on the landscaping master plan that was shown, there are routes through BOSC Village Phase 1, which in time, as other parts of the BOSC area are built out, will connect together, and they will link into the wider networks, cycle and walking networks that I talked about a few minutes ago, which run around and through the town. So people will be able to walk or cycle from the BOSC area all the way to the town centre, to the school, down into Hogmore Enclosure. Those are there to provide an alternative to jumping in the car and driving to, say, Hogmore Cafe, where you'll be able to walk from the new homes down to Hogmore Cafe, or even to the town centre.
Are there any plans to do a trim trail?
So there is already a trim trail on the eastern side of the town, near the old Mill Chase Secondary School, on the recreation ground that's managed by the town council. We are also working with a leisure centre operator to think how we might include other bits of kit equipment outside or in other areas to encourage sort of fitness activity. There are parts of the Hogmore Enclosure play area which promote balance, physical activity. So yes, certainly we would encourage more of those sorts of things being built into the design, as well as supporting things like Park Run, which before the COVID pandemic was very popular on Hogmore Enclosure. And again, we work with local groups to promote sort of not just physical fitness, but sort of mental health benefits as well.
Will there be car parking for walkers once the houses have been built?
So at the moment, people are having to park on the verges near the tennis courts at the pavilion, because we have the gates to block people using the BOSC Pavilion car park while we're in this lockdown situation. Obviously, when we're out of lockdown and BOSC Pavilion is open, then we're encouraged dog walkers and so on to park in the BOSC Pavilion car park, where there are plenty of spaces, so to cope with that. So unfortunately, for security reasons, because BOSC Pavilion is closed, we've had to put the bollards up to stop people parking in the car park, just to keep that pavilion safe. But certainly we'll encourage people once that's open again to park on that car park.
And just on BOSC there, James, somebody's asked, will the BOSC still be open for all residents?
Yes, and we're planning to obviously try and encourage people to use the BOSC Pavilion, and they'll get discount schemes, and you'll be our friends at BOSC Pavilion, and you'll get some benefits from living and living there.
Where will the construction site compound now be if the construction traffic is coming straight off of Oakhanger Road?
So the construction compound is, we unfortunately haven't got a plan in front of us, but it's up at the top end of the site, right at the top end, next to Bolly Avenue, but not off Bolly Avenue. So the intention is that the compound will be in a permanent position all the way through the first 3 years of development, and then move further northwards.
How are you making sure that the Bolly Avenue houses are not overlooked?
As I said before, we're making sure that there's a generous buffer between the back gardens of the residents and the Bolly Avenue houses. There's another 5 metre buffer before you get to the back gardens of the Bolly Avenue homes, and there's planting and everything that will screen the two. So yeah, it's unlikely that you'll be able to see through that planting into each other's gardens.
How will you manage the access to the existing railway cottages during construction?
So the access to the cottages will be untouched. It will be maintained. There will be no impact on that access.
Why does Borden need a care home when there are still spaces in the Firefly Club near Tesco's?
Well, we've been talking to the Firefly operator, and actually it is popular. There are the residents that come and go on. I've personally had some experience of that through relative of mine. And there is demand for care homes, as you have seen. It's becoming an increasingly, there's a real shortage of good quality care home provision in the country, and this area is no exception.
And just one final question as we just wrap up this session, as we're approaching 7:30. How will you keep access to disabled into the woods at the minute? We use the road onto the BOSC and area past the BOSC into the woods. Will this still be open?
The short answer is yes, we manage access for a variety of users. The further investment that we're putting up there around infrastructure to improve routes, book piles, access ways, will actually improve access over time. We have design requirements to meet through planning, as James touched on. We talk about architectural design, layouts, courtyards, and access to green spaces is all part of the way that sites are laid out and designed to ensure that people can move around freely. So the short answer is yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that sort of concludes today's webinar. Thank you to everybody who's asked questions this evening relating to the planning for the land surrounding BOSC. As mentioned, we weren't able to get through them all this evening. There have been quite a few questions in the chat box, but we will, of course, endeavour to answer all of those in an FAQ document, which will be uploaded to the Prince Philip Park website over the next few days, and also on social media. If you do have any other questions, please do email or contact WBRC, and we'll be able to answer anything further from you on this. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you all, and look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you very much.